Welcome to podcast Sarah and Michael.
Welcome to today's custom-tailored deep dive. I'm your host, Sarah.
And I'm Michael, your expert guide.
We're really thrilled to have you joining us. So today is Sunday, April 26th, 2026.
Right, and we are unpacking an event that it sent absolute shockwaves across the globe.
Yeah, the unprecedented shooting incident at the White House Correspondents Dinner at the Washington Hilton.
An event involving President Donald Trump, yeah.
Exactly. And we have this incredibly jarring stack of source material for you today.
We really do. On one hand, we've got this very visceral, first-hand survival account from a BBC journalist who was physically trapped inside that ballroom.
Yeah, and then contrasting that, and it is a massive contrast. We have a highly skeptical, really politically charged analysis that was broadcast by Iranian state media.
Right, which we're tracking via reports from the Thai news outlet, PPTVH36.
Right. And our mission today for this deep dive, it isn't just to give you a standard news recap. If you're listening to this, you've probably already seen the push notifications.
Oh, absolutely. You already know the basics.
Yeah. So we are here to unpack the timeline of the actual chaos inside that Hilton ballroom. And really to explore the mechanics of how a single terrifying event instantly fractured into entirely different global narratives.
Yeah, we're looking at how you, as someone who consumes information, navigate this landscape where, physical reality and manufactured truth are just actively colliding in real time.
So let's start on the ground. Inside the Washington Hilton.
Right. Saturday night.
You have 2,500 of the most powerful people in media and global politics, and they are packed shoulder to shoulder.
Right. It's a massive, crowded gala.
Exactly. And we're experiencing this through the perspective of the BBC's chief North America correspondent, Gary O'Donoghue. And the crucial detail here is that Gary is blind.
Right. So his entire timeline of this threat, the whole event, is constructed without a single visual cue.
Right. Which, it just fundamentally changes the anatomy of the panic.
Oh, completely. What's fascinating here is that Gary isn't distracted by the chaotic, visual spectacle of a stampede.
Yeah, he's not seeing people running.
Exactly. His perception of the danger is entirely auditory and tactile. He is processing the specific acoustics of the threat and the literal physical displacement of the air around him.
Wow, yeah. And he notes the exact moment the atmosphere shifts. He said he had just set down his knife and fork, and he hears this noise coming from the main entrance.
Right.
And because he relies so heavily on sound, his brain categorizes it instantly. He doesn't just hear a loud bang, right? He specifically identifies it as the low, dull, thudding impact of a semi-automatic weapon.
A very specific acoustic signature.
Exactly, followed immediately by the terrifying crash of breaking glass.
And, he only knows to actually take cover because he physically feels his colleague, Daniel, dive right past his head.
Oh, wow. Just the rush of movement.
Yeah, he feels the kinetic energy of the person right next to him dropping to the floor, and his survival instincts just kick in. He follows Daniel straight to the ground.
Within a matter of seconds, you have this incredibly stark contrast. It goes from a luxurious high society gala to literally the most primal state of human survival.
Oh, absolutely. They end up scrambling under a banquet tablecloth.
Right, sitting there in the dark.
Yeah, kneeling on the floor for, he said, 5 to 10 agonizing minutes, just waiting to see if a shooter's going to walk into the room and open fire on a trapped crowd of 2,500 people.
Gary's sensory experience here is basically the equivalent of being trapped in a tense horror movie where the video feed has completely cut out.
That is a terrifying way to put it, yeah.
Right, you're just left in the dark with only the isolated audio, people screaming, glass shattering, panic echoing off the ballroom walls.
Yeah. And because he obviously can't see the exits or the security response, he's entirely dependent on his colleagues under the table to act as his eyes.
Right, they're whispering the visual details of the room to him in real time.
Exactly. They're the ones who tell him that the Secret Service has completely taken over the stage.
And the visuals his colleagues describe are absolutely surreal. They are watching agents rapidly evacuate President Trump, Melania Trump, and Vice President J.D. Vance.
But, it's not a clean, orderly escort at all.
Yeah.
Gary's sources describe heavily armed agents wearing tactical helmets and Kevlar vests, actively aiming their assault weapons out at the crowd of dinner guests.
Wait, aiming at the guests?
Yeah, because they're scanning a room full of journalists in tuxedos for secondary threats. They don't know who's in there.
Wow. And while these heavily armed agents are sweeping the room about 30 meters away from Gary, someone spots the FBI director, Kash Patel.
Oh, yeah.
And he is down on the ground, just like everyone else. He is physically using his own body to shield his girlfriend, the director of the FBI, pinned to the carpet of a Washington hotel.
It perfectly illustrates the great equalizer of a kinetic threat. In that fraction of a second, your titles, your wealth, your security clearance, they mean absolutely nothing.
All right, none of it matters.
Exactly. Every single person in that room is reduced to the exact same biological imperative.
Yeah.
Get low, find cover, survive.
Yeah. But as the minutes tick by under those tablecloths, the initial adrenaline spike obviously starts to fade a bit, and the analytical brain takes over.
Right.
Gary's mind immediately shifts to this glaring logistical question. Okay, let's unpack this. How does a shooter get a semi-automatic weapon within striking distance of the president again?
Right, because Gary actually has this chilling realization while he's huddled on the floor. He thinks to himself, quote, "Another Saturday, another presidential event, another shooting."
And he isn't being hyperbolic there.
No, not at all. Gary was physically present at and survived the July 2024 assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Right, where Donald Trump was inches away from losing his life.
Exactly. To survive 2 separate presidential shooting incidents in less than 2 years, it gives Gary a baseline perspective that very few people on this planet possess.
Yeah, he knows exactly what maximum security infrastructure is supposed to feel like.
He does. And because he has that baseline, his specific observations about the Washington Hilton's security posture that night are just incredibly damning.
Yeah, they really point to a catastrophic failure of the human element because Gary notes that, from the outside, the venue looked like an absolute fortress.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Roads blocked off by law enforcement for hours.
Right. But the actual access control at the doors, Gary says the guard at the entrance merely glanced at his press pass from about 6 feet away.
Which is, a 6-foot visual check in a heavily congested low-light environment that's virtually useless for verifying credentials.
Yeah, it's just security theater.
Exactly.
Mm.
It looks impressive to someone walking by, but it offers zero functional resistance to an actual bad actor.
Right. But the failure cascades even further once he actually gets inside the building.
Oh, the metal detector part, yeah.
Yeah. Gary goes down the elevator to the ballroom level, and he has to pass through a standard metal detector. A security guard comes over to clear him. Gary walks through, and his jacket pocket actually sets off an audible beep from the detector.
A literal alarm.
A literal alarm. But the guard actively ignores it. They don't ask him to empty his pockets. They don't want him down. They don't pat him down at all.
They just wave him right through.
Right into a confined space containing the President of the United States. It's like going through airport TSA. Your carry-on bag sets off every single alarm on the scanner, and the agent just shrugs and tells you to have a nice flight.
But here, the stakes dictate the geopolitical stability of the world.
Exactly.
And, the infrastructure functioned exactly as designed. The metal detector successfully identified a metallic anomaly.
Yeah, the machine worked.
Right. It was the human operator who actively chose to override the technology. Gary explicitly stated that the security posture felt totally casual.
He really did. He said it felt like a normal, run-of-the-mill correspondents dinner where a president wasn't even on the guest list.
Which is it's mind-boggling.
It is. And the tragic irony of this entire timeline is the sheer mundanity of the moments leading up to the gunfire. Just minutes before the panic, Gary was in a side room chatting with the Secretary of Health, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Right, and RFK Jr. was just casually complaining about being hungry.
Yeah, just wanting the dinner service to start.
It's a perfectly normal human conversation happening literally seconds before all hell breaks loose.
So what does this all mean? How does a heavily guarded presidential event default to such a casual security posture, especially after the country watched an assassination attempt unfold on live television in July 2024?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we're looking at the mechanics of human complacency colliding with the normalization of political violence.
The normalization, yeah.
Right. When high-threat environments become routine, when the country experiences multiple unprecedented security events in a short window, the people guarding those environments often experience threat fatigue.
Right, they just get tired of being on high alert.
Exactly. The rigorous procedures degrade into a performance. You stop looking for the gun, and you start just, moving the line along.
Yeah.
Gary actually had this haunting thought under the table. He wondered aloud how many more times the country would have to go through this before it simply runs out of luck.
Wow. Yeah, that is a sobering, terrifying thought.
It really is.
But this is where the timeline of the event completely fractures. Because while Gary and thousands of others are physically trapped under tables, dealing with the reality of failed security, they are also completely cut off from the outside world.
Right.
Gary mentioned that while they were hiding, everyone was desperately struggling to get any cell phone signal to report what was happening.
Yeah, the networks were just completely jammed, and that technological bottleneck, that temporary vacuum of information caused by overloaded cell towers, is exactly what allowed foreign adversaries to step in and completely rewrite the reality of the event.
Because just as the BBC was preparing to report this terrifying reality of survival, a completely surreal, contrarian narrative was already being aggressively broadcast halfway across the globe.
Right.
We have to look at the reporting from the Thai news outlet PPTVHD36, which was monitoring the coverage from IRIB New W.
And just for context, IRIB is the state-run media apparatus of the Iranian government.
Yes. And while the broken glass was literally still being swept up in Washington, IRIB New W was telling its audience that the entire shooting was a pre-planned, completely staged event.
They didn't just question the security lapses, they questioned the fundamental existence of the threat itself.
Right. And to build this alternate reality, they utilized a classic disinformation tactic known as information laundering.
Exactly. They took a tiny, verifiable grain of truth, and they used it to smuggle in a massive, fabricated conspiracy.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The grain of truth they used centered around the American network Fox News.
Oh, the dropped feed.
Yes. During the live broadcast of the dinner, Fox News suddenly lost the live video feed of one of their field reporters inside the venue.
Just a technical glitch.
Right. But Iranian media immediately seized on this dropped signal. They broadcast a claim that this specific Fox reporter had received an advanced warning from the inner circle of the White House spokesperson telling them to watch out before the event even began.
And, when the Fox News studio anchor came back on air, they naturally had to explain why the live feed dropped.
Right, they have to address it to the audience.
Yeah. The anchor stated it was due to, quote, cell phone signal issues due to high user density.
Which makes perfect sense.
Right. From a purely technical standpoint, that is exactly what happens when thousands of people in a confined, reinforced ballroom suddenly try to stream video, send texts, and make calls simultaneously during an emergency. The local cell nodes simply collapse.
We know that's true because Gary O'Donoghue independently confirmed the exact same lack of signal from under his banquet table.
Exactly. But IRIB News flagged the Fox anchor's explanation as a deliberate, orchestrated cover-up.
Wow.
Yeah, they presented a standard technological failure to their audience as definitive proof of a plot to silence a reporter who supposedly knew too much.
This raises an important question, though. How easily do common logistical issues during a crisis get weaponized into proof of a conspiracy by foreign media?
Well, this raises an important question about how modern propaganda thrives. It doesn't need to invent entirely new events. It just needs to inject malicious intent into mundane logistical failures.
That's a great point.
Yeah, a dropped cell signal is boring. But a dropped cell signal framed as a government blackout, that is incredibly sticky.
Yeah.
It preys on the natural human instinct to look for patterns in the chaos.
Right.
In the absolute vacuum of breaking news, state media can manufacture an alternate reality much faster than journalists on the ground can verify the actual facts.
But we have to look at the strategic goal behind this, right? They aren't spinning these webs just for the sake of causing confusion. There is a highly calculated geopolitical motive driving this specific narrative.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to view this through the lens of the broader geopolitical conflict between the United States and Iran.
Right.
For Iranian state media, portraying the U.S. government as deeply corrupt, completely chaotic, and willing to stage violence against its own political leaders, that's a massive win for their domestic propaganda.
Yeah, it projects an image of American weakness and institutional decay right to their citizens.
Exactly.
And they made their geopolitical motives incredibly obvious once the suspect was apprehended. The sidebar sources we have note that the man arrested was described as a tutor and a game developer.
Right.
But IRIB News completely bypassed the suspect's actual background. They used the arrest to make a highly provocative, entirely unrelated statement regarding international foreign policy.
Yeah, they used a tactic known as false equivalence, or whataboutism, to pivot the narrative away from Washington entirely.
Now, I'm going to quote the Iranian media's broadcast directly here, and I want to be crystal clear with you, the listener. We are bringing this up strictly to analyze the architecture of their media strategy.
Right, we're looking at how they construct the narrative.
Exactly. We are impartially retorting the contents of their broadcast to understand their tactics, absolutely not endorsing the geopolitical viewpoints they express.
Of course.
But when referencing the arrests at the Hilton, the Iranian broadcast stated, quote, hoping that those who drop bombs on Gaza children, including those who supply fighter jets and weapons, will be arrested like this too.
I mean, that statement is the ultimate example of weaponizing a tragedy.
Yeah, it's just a complete pivot.
Right. They are taking a massive trauma, a shooting at a dinner in Washington, and treating it like open source code to program their own foreign policy objectives.
Wow, yeah.
Connecting the Hilton shooting to the conflict in Gaza has zero factual basis, but strategically. It is designed to erode America's moral high ground on the international stage.
It really is informational whiplash. You have Gary O'Donoghue, a blind journalist, sitting in the dark under a banquet table. He is listening to the very real physical sound of breaking glass.
He's smelling the panic in the air.
Yes. He is feeling the displacement of air as people dive for their lives. That is a raw, undeniable, ground-level truth.
Right.
And simultaneously, thousands of miles away, that exact same moment in time is being stripped of its human terror, stripped of its facts, completely repackaged and broadcast into millions of living rooms as a calculated theatrical production designed to cover up global military supply chains.
Which brings us to the core challenge of media literacy in 2026.
Yeah.
When you are trying to stay well-informed, it is no longer sufficient to simply ask, what happened?
Right, that's not enough anymore.
No, you are now required to simultaneously ask, who is telling me what happened, and what geopolitical advantage do they gain from telling it to me this way?
And as someone who actively seeks out knowledge, you are constantly navigating this fragmented landscape. This deep dive into the Correspondents Dinner shooting is the ultimate case study in why you can never rely on a single source or a single headline.
Absolutely. The physical reality of the shooting exists in Gary's sensory on-the-ground experience.
Right.
But the global impact of the shooting exists in how state actors like IRB manipulate it for power. To truly understand a modern historical event, you have to understand both the reality and the manipulation.
Yeah, we have to remain vigilant about the infrastructure of truth. We clearly saw the physical infrastructure of security fail at the Hilton doors.
We did, completely.
But we also saw the informational infrastructure of shared reality completely fail on the global stage within minutes of the first gunshot.
Yeah, that's incredibly true.
So we're going to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. In the past, a major historical event was something the world experienced together. The facts might have been debated later, but the baseline reality was shared.
Right, there was common ground.
Exactly. But today, when a single gunshot rings out in a crowded Washington ballroom, the echo sounds completely different depending on which side of the globe you're standing on.
It really does.
In an era of hyper-connected, deeply weaponized information, will we ever be able to experience a historical event through a single shared reality again? Or are we permanently doomed to live in completely separate, heavily curated versions of the truth?
It is a heavy, complex question, but it is undoubtedly the most important one you can ask every single time breaking news hits your feed.
Thank you so much for joining us for this custom deep dive. Keep questioning what you read, keep looking closely at your sources, and never stop being curious. We'll catch you next time.
Stay safe and stay informed.